Good morning and welcome to Grace Presbyterian Church. We're glad you're here today. We trust you'll be blessed by your presence with us, either in person or online. It's a joy to have you worshiping with us this morning. As you can see from the backdrop behind me, it's going to be an unusual week for us. We are going to be inviting the children of our church to be developing the character of knights of North Castle. Even though children are very small and very young, there's some great character traits they can develop through study of the Bible, and we're going to be talking about that this week. And in order to tie into that, I'm also going to be preaching about some of those character development opportunities in worship for the next couple of weeks. Today, we're going to be talking about two characters. One was named Shifra. The other was named Pua. And if you've never heard of them, you're not alone, but they're actually really important, because if it wasn't for Shifra and Pua, we would never have had a Moses. We would never have had an Exodus. So many other things would have never occurred. We'll be telling you much more about them as we worship later on today. But at this point in Sunday worship, I invite you to focus upon the God who takes humble people with very humble names and uses them to do extraordinary things for the kingdom of God.
Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. Come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, and the sheep of His hand. We're the sheep of His hand. Come, let us worship and bow down.
Excuse my multiple duties today. Our call to worship today is taken from the 100th Psalm. As there are many beautiful psalms in the Bible, so is this one. This passage highlights the joy and beauty of our relationship with the one true living God. Please stand and join me as we read. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth.
Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before Him with joyful songs.
Know that the Lord is God. It is He that made us, and we are His. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture.
Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise.
For the Lord is good, and His love endures forever.
His faithfulness continues through all generations.
When morning gives the skies, my heart awakening cries, may Jesus Christ be praised. Alike at work and prayer, to Jesus I repair. May Jesus Christ be praised. The night becomes as day, when from the heart
Because in Vacation Bible School this week, each one of you is going to be invited to be a knight. But the knights had some really cool stuff to do. Typically, they rode armor and they were on horseback. Not only that, they had to learn how to swim. They had to learn how to do long jumps. They had to learn how to wrestle. There was all kinds of stuff they had to do. And it took a long time to learn. And because it took a long time to learn, come on down. We need some more knights. Because it took a long time to learn. Yeah, isn't that a cool knight on horseback there? What's he holding? Know what that thing is? What's called a lance. It's a lance that was used to knock other people off horses. Yeah, okay, cool. But anyway, since it took so long to train and you had to be so strong, kids your age couldn't actually be knights in the old days. You had to be pages. None of you could be a squire. But this week in Vacation Bible School, you get to be a knight. The cool thing is you still get to go on a quest. What kind? Boy, this guy's really drilling me today. You're going to be in a quest for the king's armor. Armor is cool. You're right. And in Vacation Bible School this week, we will learn that the king's armor has been stolen, and we need some very good knights to get it back. Good question. You'll have to figure out why as the week goes on. You have to come and yeah. You'll have to do lots of careful things to get it back. We're going to need you. We're going to depend on you to help us get that armor back. And in the process, you're actually going to be learning about another set of armor that's actually in the Bible.
I know about that. It's really annoying up there.
You know about it. Well, that's part of it. You're right. That's part of it, the truth part. It's always good to have truth. And there's some other parts too that you're going to get to pick up this week as you go along. So, here is the ceremony for today. If you are ready, even though you're officially too young, if you are ready to be a knight, I'm actually going to dub you knights this morning. You think you can do it?
Yeah.
Oh, probably? Okay, all right. If you're ready, you got to stand up right there in front of the steps.
Children aren't the only ones that God calls to acts of loyalty, and children aren't the only ones who fail now and then. Thus, it is appropriate in this and every service of worship to go to God in prayer, confessing our failures, seeking His guidance, trusting His grace. If that sort of prayer is comfortable for you, then I invite you to join me in it now. Please stand as we read. Gracious and holy God, we thank you for the example of those who dared to live our faith when the choice involved great risk. They stood up when your people were beaten down. They denounced the abusers like waivers. Forgive us for the times when we have failed to follow in their footsteps, choosing security over integrity or comfort over courage. In your mercy, forgive what we have been, help us amend what we are, and direct what we shall be, so that the bold faith that changed our world might live again in us. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. We receive many blessings and gifts from God. One truly special gift is that of forgiveness. I assure you, as I know myself, in Jesus Christ we are forgiven. Thanks be to God.
Yes, you are beautiful, beautiful. Oh, yes, you are Prince of Peace, Son of God. Yes, you are. Yes, you are wonderful, wonderful. Oh, yes, you are. Counselor, Almighty God. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Prince of Peace, Son of God. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you
Having been encouraged by their words, I invite you to remember some people who are facing particular challenges today. First, I hope you'll intercede for Tom McDaniel following the sudden death of his mother, Catherine, and for Valerie Berry following the death of her friend, Catherine. We've been asked to remember Pat Nordstrom, who was hospitalized with internal problems this week, and Lauren Anderson, who was suffering from cardiac problems. We're also asked to remember those recuperating from surgery, including Bill Brooks and Eric Youngquist. Interestingly enough, we were also asked this week to pray for a beloved pet, and I think that's perfectly okay. Pets bring lots of comfort in this world. Looking beyond our own community, I hope you'll intercede for those communities in which COVID-19 is still a real and present danger, and hope you'll pray for the families of those who lost loved ones in the condo collapse in Florida. Looking beyond our own nation, I hope you'll pray for the people of Afghanistan who are once again endangered by the Taliban. Pray that women in particular might be safe. And finally, I hope you'll pray for us, each one of us, that we might become vessels of God's healing love and grace. For we do ask it in the name of him who taught us to pray by saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything that I need.
Bible reading for this morning comes from the book of Exodus, chapter 1, beginning with verse 6. Listen now for the word of God to you. Pharaoh is bursting not with Egyptians, but with Hebrews. God's promise is being fulfilled through them. But not everyone is thrilled.
But a new king arose in Egypt who did not know Joseph. He said, "Look, the descendants of Israel have become more numerous than us. Come, let us outwit them, lest they become innumerable. Then, if war breaks out, they will join our enemies and fight against us, and rise up from the land."
Four words are important here. The first is no, yada in Hebrew. It's always practical, it's always tangible, never philosophical or theoretical. In order to be effective, this new Pharaoh had to know his people, all his people, not just the Egyptians. And he had to know about Joseph, who had done so much for that land, protecting it from famine, delivering it in so many ways. But this new Pharaoh, in spite of his power, his learning, his wealth, did not know Joseph or his descendants, and that would be a real problem here. The second key word is outwit. Hakam in Hebrew. Again, it's always practical knowledge, very desirable in Proverbs. We might call it common sense, avoiding drunkenness, avoiding problems, saving money, working hard. But there's also in this context a very competitive edge. The third word is innumerable. Again, notice the hyperbole. There's lots of that in this text. Should also notice Pharaoh's fear. Because whenever an oppressed minority becomes a majority, there is a threat to the people in power. Much like slaveholders in the antebellum South, these rulers lived in fear that their servants would rebel. With proper leadership, these servants would break free from their oppression, and they might cause real harm to the rulers too. The last word is rise up. Allah in Hebrew, it's used in very interesting context. In Exodus, though, interestingly enough, it's exactly what Moses asked for. He asks that the people might be given permission to rise up from the land of Goshen, that's a fertile plain near the water, and go to their ancestral homelands to worship. That's all that Moses asked for. Let us go and worship, then we will come back and serve you. But the very thought of letting the people rise up at any level was so threatening to this Pharaoh that he refused it from the start.
So they appointed taskmasters over them to afflict them with forced labor, using them to build Pithom and Rahamses as cities of storage for Pharaoh.
Forced labor is never desirable. At this point, at least, it's justifiable. It's justifiable. Just as Joseph got lots of people to work to build storage silos so that the whole people could be delivered from famine in Egypt. So at this point, it's justifiable to get the Hebrew people to build these storage facilities. But soon it will become quite clear that the real purpose is not defense or helping the nation at large. The real purpose is inflicting harm.
But the more they were afflicted, the more the children of Israel multiplied and burst out. Then Egyptians began to despise them. The Egyptians made their lives bitter with hard work in brick and mortar and all types of field work. They were driven harshly.
4 words matter here. Afflicted. Afflicted, again, it means a bit over the top. It's not just to work hard, not just to drive. It's to humiliate and oppress. Another word is burst out. I love that. It's part of the limits imposed upon them. In spite of the harsh conditions, these Hebrew people would not be oppressed or contained. They burst out from the limits that were imposed on them. That leads to the third word, despise. People of Egypt actually despise them at this moment. But there was also an element of dread. And that leads to the fourth word, marad, which means bitterness. The Egyptians made their lives bitter with all sorts of harsh work, not just making bricks or mixing mortar, but also tilling in the fields, whatever they could do to humiliate and oppress. Those of you who participated in the Seder service we had this year might remember there is a moment in the Passover Seder where you're asked to eat something bitter, marad, bitter herbs. And this is the reason why, to remind us of the bitterness they experienced in the time of their oppression in Egypt. But what this slide reveals is that even marar is not enough. Even marar does not contain them. So Pharaoh has to take another step to cull the Hebrew herd.
Then the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one named Sipra and the other Pua, saying, when you help the Hebrew women to give birth, and you see that a son is being born, you shall kill him. But if the baby is a daughter, she may live. But the midwives feared God. Thus, they did not do what the king had said. Instead, they helped the boys to live.
This is flagrant disobedience. Not only did they allow the boys to live, they help the boys to live, just as a decent midwife would. They do what's ever necessary to provide for them and save them. The reason, we are told, is that they fear God. Interestingly enough, they fear God even more than the Egyptian king.
So the king summoned the midwives to him and said, why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live? These midwives answered, saying, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are prolific and give birth before the midwife comes. Yeah.
That's worth a laugh. This word prolific means literally full of life. And the implication is quite clear. You're not going to stop them. You're not going to squelch them. Not going to happen. It's pretty obviously a lie in this case. But this Pharaoh would believe it. Believing that these Hebrews are little more than pack animals, it's not hard for him to believe that they can whelp like pack animals, that midwives would not be needed for them. So in that sense, his own bigotry gives credence to the story and allows these children and these midwives to escape.
So the people continued to proliferate, and God was good to the midwives. Because they feared God, he gave them progeny of their own. This is the word of God. Thanks be to God.
Amen. The word I translated progeny in that last verse is actually house in Hebrew. God gave each woman her own house. We're actually talking about a dynasty here. Those of you who have read the Bible carefully are probably familiar with the house of David, the house of Saul, the house of Jonathan, and so on. Houses are almost always named for men. But in this text, Shiphrah and Puah get houses of their own. Such a beautiful, ironic twist. Shiphrah means lovely. She had a good name from the start. Puah didn't. Her name means tossed out or dispersed. She probably was not lovely in appearance, but she was lovely in her character, lovely in the things that she did. And because of that, she got her own dynasty, her own house. Ultimately, the book is about Moses and his work within the world, but none of that would have happened without the work of these two women at the start. So you see, it is in many ways a joy-filled text. Even though it describes a time of hardship, a season of morar, it's ultimately a text of triumph and of joy. You can see it in the use of hyperbole, words for growth, prodigious, prolific, teamed, words for labor, afflict, impose, drive, and words to show how all that failed. The more they were afflicted, the more the people multiplied and burst out. You can also see it in his use of irony. Pharaoh had the money, Pharaoh had the training, Pharaoh had the power. But when push comes to shove, he does not outwit the Hebrew women. They outwit him for such a simple scheme. Thus his efforts to cut the population just expanded it. And the people grew stronger in their numbers than ever before. In some ways, it's almost too good to be true. The women defeat the men, the weak defeat the strong, the poor defeat the rich. Nonetheless, it is delightful. That sort of story is always delightful. In that sense, these two women sort of remind me of the nuns from The Sound of Music who stole the distributor caps, preventing the Nazis from catching Maria and her family as they escape. Far-fetched, to be sure, but so delightful, so joyful to perceive. But what does that mean for us, for you and me today? Three things I think are key. We're really going to apply this morning's text. First, I'd suggest this text invites us to reflect upon the mysterious ways of God. After all, if you had been visiting Egypt in the ancient days, you would not have seen the Hebrew people as great victors during this story. You would have seen them all as slaves, bearing tremendous burdens, making bricks, mixing mortar, and so on. For most of the text, God's silent. God does not say a thing. And in the absence of that voice, their lives go south in all sorts of ways. It always happens for minorities when they are not seen as humans, no value, no dignity, no intrinsic worth. At best, the children of Israel were seen in this text as mules, pack animals to be driven at will. At worst, they were seen as threats. When God's voice is silent, that's what happens. That's what happens to human societies. They get polarized, they get divided, they don't see one another as humans. They see one another as obstacles to be defeated and pushed out. That's why this text is so vital in our land and world today. So the first thing we need to know is the mysterious ways of God. Even when he seems to be silent, this text makes it very clear. God's moving, God's speaking, God's acting, and he's often doing it through the little people. those who were so easily neglected by the rest. That's the first point of the text. Here's the second one. God may need to bring you through some hardship to fully bless you in the end. That's why there's so many words for labor in this text. Making bricks, stirring mortar, tilling fields, tasting bitterness in the end. So often that is a part of life's journey. That's just the reality in which we live. We're not in heaven yet. But God has a purpose for it. He always does. After all, if the Hebrews had been comfortable in Egypt, if they'd been well treated by the rulers, by the hosts of that land, there never would have been a nation of Israel. They'd never choose to leave the Nile Delta with all that fertile land. They would never want to rise up and find a country of their own. And the same thing's often true of us, of our ancestors from the past. After all, most of those who immigrated to this country did not do so just for kicks. It's not easy to leave your homeland, the people you love behind. They did it because they had to. The Irish were literally starving in the 19th century. And the poor folks of Central Europe were suffering horribly as well. In the 20th century, lots of that pain came from the Americas, Central America. All the conflict and the strife that is roiling those lands. We grieve for that. We really do. But we often need to acknowledge it's actually that grief and that pain that brings change. Throughout the whole history of America, it's been that sort of suffering that brought our people here. To create something different, something better, something new and profound. God may need to bring you through some suffering and some hardship to really bless you in the end. That's point 2. And here's the third one, perhaps the most important one of all. Your choice to face these challenges with commitment to God's values can bless countless generations in the years to come. It really can. I saw a beautiful example of that just a few years back when a man named Nicholas Winton was finally recognized for all the lives that he had saved in World War II. As a citizen of Great Britain, he made his living as a banker, first in Hamburg, then Berlin. Then he became a broker with the London Stock Exchange. In the process, he acquired some wealth, which he originally planned to use for a ski trip to Switzerland in 1938. But a phone call from some friends in Czechoslovakia changed all that. These friends had befriended a number of Jewish citizens whose lives were in horrific threat. Nazi troops were coming. They all knew that. And they knew the fate that awaited both these parents and their children soon. So instead of cutting the slopes in Switzerland, this gentleman went off to Czechoslovakia and spent 6 weeks of ardent effort, contacting everyone he knew to save children. Jewish children whose lives were threatened. He ran advertisements in every major newspaper in Great Britain. He contacted every relief agency he knew of. He called individual friends and he says, "You've got to save these kids. You absolutely must. It's what we have to do." And during that brief 6 weeks, he managed to get 669 children out. They had to go through Holland. Officially, the borders of Holland were already closed. But again, he used the little money he had earned as a broker and his contacts in business to reassure the Dutch government that the children wouldn't stay there. They were just passing through. And they did. They did. In 1939, when the war got worse, almost all of that was forgotten. Of course, there was so much else going on, and Nicholas Winton was largely forgotten too. But in 2007, a woman who ran a British TV program called Esther Ranson got word about this gentleman and what he did. So she invited him to an episode of her program, sort of like This Is Your Life in Britain. She invited him to an episode of this program. It was held in a large auditorium. And in that large auditorium, after explaining a bit about his life, she invited anyone who might have been saved by Nicholas Winton to stand up. Remember, 69 years had passed. Nonetheless, 12 people did. 12 of those children who he had saved stood up around him. Then she asked if anyone in the audience who was a child or grandchild of those 669 orphans to stand. The whole congregation did. Hundreds of people there. The place erupted with applause. It was such an amazing moment. It really was. Just as Shifra and Pua established their own dynasties through faithfulness to God, so this British gentleman established a dynasty of orphaned Jewish children who would live to bless his homeland for centuries to come. I'm not Shifra or Pua or Nicholas Winton either, but I believe in their example and in the faith they shared. Even more than that, I believe that it is possible for ordinary people, those with very little power, to make an extraordinary difference if they choose to act with courage amidst the challenges that they face. And I believe that you can be one of those people too. Let us pray. Dear God, thank you for the witness of Shifra and Pua and Nicholas and countless other people whose names have now been lost to history. Thank you for the promise that you are working with them to undermine oppression, even when the force of evil seems to be so strong. Help us to honor them, both in word and deed. But even more important, help us to follow them, even when the road is rough. For we do ask it in your holy name. Amen. Please join me in our closing hymn.
Story, bring her back to glorious far.
Hear the good news of the gospel. Wherever you go, God goes with you. Wherever you are, God is already there. The same God who dwells in you has something he wants to do through you where you are. So go forth with God's blessing to bless the lives of others, remembering that Christ speaks through you. Amen.
Glory to the Lord God, glory to